Springfield Dispatchers meeting.
Hi there. My name is Dan Krug. My wife isn't responding to text messages or phone calls.
Kristil Krug, a 44 years old woman. And in a moment, you're going to see how the last moments of her life unfolded. It's December 2023, late afternoon, in a quiet neighborhood in Centennial, Colorado. Kristil pulls her car into the garage, the same garage she has used hundreds of times before. The door closes behind her, sealing the space. There is no sense of danger, no visible threat, nothing out of place. She steps out of the car. She never makes it back inside the house. What happens next takes place in a confined space, with no witnesses and no sound reaching the street. There is no struggle that alerts anyone nearby, no interruption, no sudden rescue. When the garage door stays closed and Kristil doesn't answer her phone, the timeline has already moved past the point where anything can be stopped. By the time her body is discovered, the most dangerous part of the story is already over. And the person responsible is still standing in plain sight. In the days before Kristil Krug is killed, her phone becomes the center of her life. Not because of work, not because of family, because someone won't stop contacting her. The messages arrive at irregular hours, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes late at night. They come through text, email, social media, different platforms, different accounts. The tone shifts without warning, apologetic, then angry, then threatening. The sender claims to be a man from her past, an ex-boyfriend, someone she once trusted and then cut off. Kristil doesn't respond at first. She blocks one account, another appears, she blocks that one too, then another. The messages keep coming, as if blocking them only encourages whoever is behind them. The content escalates. The sender claims to be watching her, claims to know her schedule, mentions places she's been that day, mentions her house, mentions her children. Kristil saves the messages. She shows them to people close to her. She becomes cautious, changes routines, checks her surroundings when she parks, looks twice before entering her home. She is not panicking, but she is alert because the messages are specific, and specificity changes everything. At some point, she goes to the police. She reports the stalking. She provides screenshots. She explains that the messages are relentless and that they are becoming more aggressive. The situation is logged. There is no arrest. The sender remains unknown. The messages continue. Weeks pass like this. Each day adds weight. Each message tightens the pressure. The sender references conversations they never had. Memories Kristil doesn't recognize. Events that didn't happen the way they're being described. Something doesn't add up. Still, the danger feels external. A faceless threat outside the home. Someone lurking somewhere else, watching from a distance. Inside the house, life continues. Kristil lives with her husband. They share children. They share routines. They share space. There are no signs of forced entry, no damage to the house. No indication that anyone else is slipping in and out. The threat, as Kristil understands it, exists beyond the walls of her home. Then, shortly before her death, the messages shift again. The tone becomes more controlled, less emotional, more certain. The sender no longer asks for anything. No apologies. No explanations. Just statements. Kristil tells people she feels like something is coming.
Now it's escalating. I keep trying to remind myself this is intending to be terrorizing. This is intending to scare me.
Not in a dramatic way. Not as a prediction. As an observation. The pattern has changed, and patterns matter. On the day she is killed, there is nothing unusual on the surface. She runs errands. She drives home. She pulls into the garage. Nothing in the timeline breaks until the moment she steps out of the car. There is no recorded struggle. No neighbor hears anything. No camera captures the act itself. Only the result. Kristil Krug is found dead in her garage. The cause of death is blunt force trauma. There are no signs of a random break-in. No missing valuables. No evidence of a stranger forcing entry. The investigation begins where the messages left off. Detectives focus on the stalker. They analyze the accounts, the writing style, the timing, the language. They trace IP addresses. They subpoena records. What they find doesn't lead outside the home. It leads inward. The accounts used to harass Kristil were accessed from locations tied directly to her household. The timing of the messages aligns with moments when only one person could have been sending them. The ex-boyfriend doesn't exist. Not in the way the messages describe. The identity was constructed, manufactured, used. The person sending the messages had access to Kristil's daily life, her movements, her schedule, her fears. They didn't need to watch from a distance. They were already there. When police confront Kristil's husband with the digital evidence, the narrative collapses quickly.
I get the narrative you're putting together, but it alleges that I would do this to my children. There has to be someone else.
The stalking, the threats, the impersonation, all point back to him. The person who reported concern. The person who offered reassurance. The person who lived with her. The murder no longer looks like an outside threat that finally arrived. It looks like the endpoint of a controlled process. Kristil Krug did not die because the system failed to catch a stranger. She died because the danger was never external. And by the time that becomes clear, the timeline cannot be reversed. The investigation moves quickly once the source of the messages is identified, because at that point, the case stops being about an unknown stalker and starts being about proximity, access, and opportunity. Detectives reconstruct the weeks leading up to Kristil Krug's death in strict sequence. They line up message timestamps with household activity, work schedules, phone records, and internet usage. When they do that, the pattern tightens instead of expanding. The messages are not being sent from random locations. They are sent from places Kristil already occupies. Sometimes from inside the home, sometimes from nearby areas reached within minutes. Never from anywhere that would require long-distance travel or careful concealment. The impersonated ex-boyfriend is traced next. Investigators look for evidence that this person exists in the way Kristil was led to believe. They search for prior reports, shared acquaintances, digital footprints that would confirm a long-term relationship. They find fragments of truth and a large amount of fabrication. The name is real, but the relationship is exaggerated. Conversations are invented. Shared history is rewritten in the messages to sound plausible, but not verifiable. The goal was not accuracy. The goal was control. Kristil is made to believe that someone from her past is resurfacing. Someone emotional enough to stalk her, but distant enough to explain why he never appears in person. That framing keeps the threat outside the house and away from the person closest to her. While this is happening, Kristil's husband positions himself as support. He knows about the messages. He discusses them with her. He offers reassurance. He agrees that the situation is disturbing. He encourages caution. Nothing about his behavior raises immediate alarms because it aligns perfectly with what a concerned spouse would do. That alignment becomes significant later. Police interview friends, co-workers, and family members. They are careful not to inject conclusions. They ask what Kristil said, not what people think now. Multiple people describe the same thing. Kristil was unsettled, increasingly cautious, but not confused. She believed the threat was real. She believed it came from outside the home. She did not suspect her husband. The day of the murder is broken down minute by minute. Kristil leaves work. She runs errands. Her phone activity shows nothing unusual. No confrontations, no sudden arguments. No messages indicating an imminent meeting or confrontation. When she drives home, there is no evidence she expects anything different from an ordinary evening. Her husband is home. There are no calls placed to emergency services. No neighbors report disturbances. No security footage captures a stranger entering or leaving the property. What happens in the garage is reconstructed from physical evidence rather than witness accounts. The injuries indicate close-range violence, sustained long enough to ensure incapacitation. There is no sign of defensive wounds consistent with the prolonged fight. There is no indication that Kristil was chasing or being chased. The attack begins and ends in the same confined area. Afterward, the house remains quiet. The timeline does not include frantic activity, hurried cleanup, or attempts to stage a break-in. Instead, it shows delay. Time passes before Kristil is reported missing. During that window, the person responsible has already shifted from action to management. When police formally name Kristil's husband as a suspect, the digital trail is already dense. Investigators confront him with login records, device IDs, and message drafts recovered from his phone and computer. They show him how the stalking narrative was constructed piece by piece. The fake accounts, the recycled phrases, the timing that coincides with his availability. There is no alternate explanation that fits the data. The impersonation charge is established first because it is undeniable. From there, the case moves toward motive, and motive does not come from a single event. It comes from accumulation, from pressure building over a time, from a need to control perception, to redirect fear, and to maintain dominance without being identified as the source of it. By the time the murder occurs, the groundwork has already been laid. Kristil has been isolated psychologically, focused on an external threat that does not exist, while the real threat operates without resistance. The killing is not impulsive. It is not chaotic. It is the final step in a sequence that has already proven effective. And once that sequence is exposed, the story is no longer about whether the crime can be explained. It is about how long it took to see what was already happening inside the house.